Creative babble.
That moment when you realize your skincare is actually working. That's Rodan and Fields, the #1 female dermatologist-founded skincare brand in the U.S. Designed by 2 dermatologists who don't just know women's skin, they know how to formulate for it. Rodan and Fields, love what you see. Tap the banner or visit rodanandfields.com/Spotify to get your exclusive welcome offer.
Javier, before we dive into this episode, I've got to ask you something.
Uh-oh. Here we go. What's on your mind, Neal? Talk to me.
Do you know who the Gucci goddess is?
I didn't before today, but now that I know, I mean, at first I thought it sounded like someone or something out of Instagram selling luxury knockoffs or something like that.
Yeah, so this is not Instagram. This is a real fraudster who was scamming people while rocking, head to toe designer clothes. And she loved Gucci in particular.
I mean, this story, when I found out about it, it was just too good to be true.
I know, the Gucci goddess. I mean, that's just such a brilliant name.
I'll tell you what, I didn't know much about her, but that name just instantly got me hooked, man.
Yeah, so we're going to get into it today. Let's just say she's the definition of flashy fraud. I mean, we have lots of Ponzi schemers. They spend big bucks, but you're going to love this story, Javier.
Yeah, this one's, part of our show is just showing the exuberance of some and the lifestyle of some of these schemers. And this one, wow, she lived it up. Yeah.
She sure did. When the feds finally came knocking, they discovered 82 vehicles, 32 properties, and more jewelry than is in Cartier's vault. She loved to spend the dough.
Yeah.
I'm Neal McTighe.
I'm Javier Leyva.
And this is the Ponzi Playbook.
Security and compliance don't just build trust, they demand it. If you're a startup founder tackling your first audit or a security pro scaling your GRC program, you know how overwhelming compliance can be. That's where Vanta comes in. Vanta helps businesses automate compliance across 35 plus networks like SOC 2 and ISO 27001. So you can skip the busy work and focus on what really matters. It centralizes security workflows, speeds up questionnaires by 5 times, and helps you stay ahead of vendor risk. And it's not just a time saver, it's a money saver too. A new IDC white paper found that Vanta customers achieve $535,000 per year in benefits, and the platform pays for itself in just 3 months. More than 9,000 companies, including Atlassian, Cora, Factory, trust Vanta to manage risk and improve security in real time. Want to try it for less? For a limited time, you can get $1,000 off at vanta.com/Ponzi. That's VANTA.com/Ponzi for your exclusive discount.
So the Gucci goddess, Janet Yamanaka Mello, she's this criminal mastermind, and I want our listeners to imagine her throughout this whole episode driving around in a custom Gucci-themed Rolls Royce. Now, she didn't really have a Gucci-themed Rolls Royce, but
that's what I'm picturing. Yeah,
she's got Gucci in her Rolls Royce. So She's got Maseratis, mansions, she's dripping in gold. You'd think that she was the CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
And Neal, normally, I mean, the Ponzi playbook, we're talking about Ponzi schemes, but this time we are kind of, taking a little left turn because Janet Mello, she wasn't a Ponzi schemer, so to speak, but man, she lived life like the biggest Ponzi's of the
Yeah. She made the Ponzi schemers, some of them that we featured, look like they were cheapos.
Right.
She was a fraudster. So she committed fraud. She didn't commit a Ponzi scheme. But the way she pulled it off was not what you'd really expect. Her victims were, let's just say, armed to the teeth. She preyed on the most powerful military in the world, the U.S. Army.
That's ridiculous. Like, who would try to scam the U.S. Army?
I know.
I mean,
right? Taking it right to the most dangerous force on the planet. But that's what she did. She was a civilian employee for the U.S. Army at Fort Sam in Houston, Texas. So she didn't wear fatigues. but if they were fatigues, Javier, who would have made them?
Yeah, that would probably be Gucci fatigues.
Gucci fatigues.
Yeah. So typically when you think of a military civilian employee, you picture someone working behind a desk in a modest office, crunching numbers or handling logistics.
But not Janet Mello. She was nothing like that. She stood out, and she stood out big time. While her colleagues were wearing, the business cash, she was showing up in these designer labels, strutting those heels, and those heels were worth more than most people's, monthly salary.
Oh, I bet. She wasn't exactly blending in, but she would tell people that she just has a rich husband. So that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it could explain things, right? People do have rich spouses.
Like, who would imagine that she is ripping off the U.S. Army? I mean, come on.
Yeah, especially to the amount that could pay for all of these things. Specifically, Mello worked with the 4-H Military Partnership Grant Program. This grant program funded activities for kids whose parents were often, deployed. And they'd organize things like youth leadership camps, STEM workshops, sports events. They wanted to keep the kids engaged to help them cope with the challenges of military life. So it was a fundamentally noble endeavor.
Yeah, it sounds like a great program for kids who really need it.
Yeah, and she leveraged that access because she was working on that grant program. She also leveraged it to access, what do you think? Funds. She knew how to work in that system. So what do you say? Should we get into the inner machinations, the details of how this scheme worked?
Yeah, let's do it. Mello wasn't just skimming off the top of grant money, like a little bit here, a little bit there, trying to go under the radar, so to speak, right? No, she created fake vendor contracts, staged phony invoices, and even set up ghost accounts under family members' names. Very Ponzi-like, right?
Yeah.
So she's creating this flurry of documentations and she's running multiple scams within one program.
And one key element here was a program called Child.
Child with a Y.
Child with a Y. And she used this program in particular for her scams. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about Child, what it stands for and what it did?
Yeah, so CHILD is an acronym. Like I said, it's Child with a Y. It stands for Children and Youth Leadership Development. And it was designed to provide mentorship, career training, counseling for military-connected youth. Think about job fairs, college prep workshops, leadership summits, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and she saw this as just another pot of money that she could exploit. She would file fraudulent reports for fake events and then pocket the money. And with every fraudulent new invoice she sent, she then was funneling what turned out to be hundreds of thousands of dollars into her own bank account. And then that would fuel the spending spree in the high-end real estate, jewelry, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, my question is, how did she do this? How was she able to juggle all of these schemes without raising any red flags?
Government waste. Sometimes, and this is the legitimacy of, looking at government programs. she was surrounded by bureaucracy and people who trusted her. So she was able to sort of fly under the radar longer than you'd expect. But eventually, the accountants show up and people start tracing the money and start wondering. And that's how this all fell apart.
So this is very unusual because usually when we talk about the victims, we're talking about people that were like swindled, like just scammed into some sort of investment fund. But the victims here is the U.S. government. We're talking about the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the 4-H military partnership program, military children, right? We were talking about this program was designed for them. And worst of all, according to the New York Post, they reported that the organization never provided a dime of financial aid to help the children or the service members, which is wild.
Yeah, that's terrible. She repeated this scam over 40 times, and she was able to rake in an astounding amount of money, over $100 million, which is a drop in the bucket of the DOD in terms of their budget. However, that's $100+ million that she was able to funnel into her personal bank account under these false entities that she made it seem like they were carrying out the duties and services of the grants. So there are definitely victims here. And when you really get down to it, the real victims are the children who were not receiving the benefits, which is, quite sad.
That's crazy. So do you want to talk about how she spent all this sweet government cash?
Oh, it must have felt great, She went on a real estate shopping spree. It's not even clear how many properties she bought. Some people are saying 31, some are saying 32. We know that it was north of $23 million worth of cash in real estate. She was acquiring multi-million-dollar mansions across multiple states. And not only mansions, condos, things with huge acreage. She was amassing an empire of real estate properties.
And just for a reference here, just to put things into perspective, Taylor Swift, the queen of pop or whatever, I don't know if they call her that, she only owns 8 properties.
Oh, the poor thing.
And she's freaking Taylor Swift.
Yeah, and the Gucci goddess, though.
Yeah, this lady has like 32 properties.
32
It's
properties.
insane.
Well, and here are some of the details on a few of those properties. Since this episode really is about extravagance and showing about how greed can get to the point of just ostentatious, lavish spending. That's really the essence of this, the Gucci goddess. She bought in Preston, Maryland, an 8-bedroom, 12-bathroom mansion. It had 55 garage spaces, and there were more acres than garage spaces. There were 58 acres. She bought this for over $3 million. There was a 40 by 20 heated salt water infinity pool because, you gotta relax those muscles when you're dealing with the stress of a fraud. Running a scheme, stressful.
It's very stressful. And I don't recommend it for it gives you bad juju,
It does.
A lot of tension.
Yeah, and maybe this is a good point to off-road here. Javier and we did a spa day.
Oh my God, yes, we did.
Yes, and we were getting the stress out of all of our schemes, so that aren't
yeah, but
working.
It's not what you're thinking, guys. This was more equivalent to torture because
Yes.
I was having a bad day, like a really, really bad day, and I told Neal about it, and he's like, hey, I got an idea. Let's have a spa day. But this is not what you guys are thinking, okay?
No, this was cryotherapy. We went into a negative 40-degree chamber.
Negative
separately.
40 degree. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
We did the infrared lights. We did the sauna where we had to escape before the timer went off.
Oh my God.
But
it was so hot. It was a dry sauna. It was a dry sauna.
It was a dry sauna. And we tried to talk in there, but eventually we were just like, ugh.
Yeah, it was pretty miserable when we got to the 30-minute mark. But I want to talk about this cryogenic chamber thing because that was so scary. I was actually so nervous about going there. Negative 140 degrees.
Oh, was that what it was? Negative 140?
or something.
It was
ridiculous.
It was something ridiculous. Yeah, like I thought, like death.
And then they make it sound like so comfortable, like, oh, well, you could pick your own song or whatever. And I'm like, Neal, you go first, man, because I don't want to be the first one in there. And so you go in there, and they lock you up in this like vertical coffin, and you instantly turned into Mr. Freeze. Like I was watching ice form on your eyelids, and your hair was covered in frost in an instant. And I was like, oh my God, so nervous.
This is terrible. Why would you want to go in there? But then I came out and I was like,
but you were
Superman.
A champ, dude.
Yeah.
You look like Bane from Batman.
Oh, yeah.
You had your arms across your chest, and you looked like such a badass. So like, how could
I was sucking my
it?
gut in too the whole time.
So I did it, and it was actually not that bad. It really wasn't that bad. I don't know why, but it wasn't that bad. But I still don't recommend it.
Are cryotherapy places, are they schemes? Are they frauds? Is this real?
I think this.
Is there something fishy going on there?
There was something fishy because there was nothing relaxing about this. They tried to sell us on a membership, but we escaped.
Dear listeners, go look up the fraudster. His name is Greg Lindbergh in North Carolina.
All right.
Yeah, he's in prison, but he started writing books, or at least he had ghostwriters, talking about cold showers and the benefits and how the cold would activate, cellular growth and give him sort of superpowers. So maybe the fraudsters do like cryo, and we were onto something there.
They like to freeze their assets. Yeah, we'll definitely use it.
Your bank account's frozen.
But no, anyways, that was a good little sidetrack because we were thinking about recording in the hot sauna, but it was a good little stress reliever. But back to our friend Janet Mello. She was very stressed out. There was no amount of saltwater infinity pool that could relax what was coming, right? Yeah,
all those baths, she could try to jump in the bubbles, but it was the stress, the heat was on. It was going to thaw her out.
All right. Well, let's continue the conversation right after the break.
ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track, and ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
I was thinking about, like, as you were listing all these properties that she owns, I was looking at some of the pictures. It's incredible how much property she owns. And I'm just wondering, how did that not set off alarms somewhere? Like, how's she paying for all these houses? Is she getting a mortgage for all these houses? I mean, surely that would raise some alarm, wouldn't it?
She's committing money laundering. She's taking money from the government, the U.S. Army, right? She's depositing it in one bank account, moving it over here, forming an LLC there, acquiring the assets, making fraudulent statements to the sellers about where that money's coming from, or at least to the degree that needed to be disclosed.
And she's probably paying for all these properties in cash, right?
Correct. So who wouldn't want to close a deal, right? She has $3.5 million ready.
Right.
And you can close that day. And not only should the alarm bells be going off as it relates to real estate, she also has this automobile collection, 82 vehicles. I mean, almost $4 million worth of vehicles. She wasn't even able to drive all these things.
Yeah.
Tell our listeners a little bit about these vehicles.
Yeah, man, she had supercars, luxury vehicles like Maserati, Gran Turismo. Is that how you say it? Gran Turismo, multiple Mercedes, and 2 Aston Martins.
But she also liked the classic cars, right?
Yeah, because, you know, they have a lot more personality. She had a 1954 Corvette, a 1966 Mustang, and, oh, man, what about motorcycles?
Ooh, she loved to ride those cycles, didn't she?
I mean, seriously, how many motorcycles does one woman need? She had 16 Harley Davidsons, 5 Triumphs, a 1955 Ferrari Fratelli, 165 Racer. I mean, her entire vehicle collection, the 82 vehicles, were valued at $3.5 million, like you said. That's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. But what's even more ridiculous is that was nothing compared to her love of Gucci. She had $11 million worth of jewelry and high-end fashion in one single day. Just one day. She dropped $923,000 on gold bangles and necklaces. Just making it happen. She didn't just love Gucci, she also loved
equal opportunity. Yeah.
Louis Vuitton.
Yeah, and just to remind the listeners, this took place, I mean, she started this scheme in 2016, and they finally busted her in 2023. It took 6 years before investigators noticed any irregularities with the grant distributions. Let's just put it this way. Janet Mello requested $117 million in payments from the government, and she only received $108 million, almost $109 million.
Oh, the poor gal.
She got almost all the money that she asked for. But what were some of the red flags?
Clearly, this case demonstrates that there is lack of oversight with government spending. And in the case of Janet Mello, she was running the child program. She was approving payments. She was embezzling the money. She was spending the money, and she was able to hide it for many years. The red flags were there, but there was no system that was deeply looking at the transactions. Only after 6 years did some folks in the Army start to realize that there were disproportionate amounts of money going to fund the child program. So that was a red flag. Then they started to dig deeper, and they found that those payments were going to a UPS store mailbox instead of to a legitimate organization. Doesn't mean that a UPS mailbox is not legitimate. However, it is a red flag when you start talking about that sort of money. And then they started to dig even deeper to look into the actual transactions out of the child account. And they found that she was using the money directly from the child account to pay for luxury items, to pay for real estate purchases. So it wasn't all going into separate bank accounts or entities. She was directly linking that money to her fraud, which was just stupid. But she probably felt emboldened because no one was poking around and she was living this life.
You know what? There's a lot of conversations going around about government waste, and we really need to look into, how we spend our money. And I think this is a good example of looking at how the military spends their money and the contractors, because it does seem like a black hole, right? Because, and it also gives the impression that the military, they get what they want all the time. It's a huge part of our budget. And not to say that this kind of fraud is rampant, but if we're going to look at other programs, we should also take a look at the Department of Defense and how their contractors are using their money. This is a prime example of that.
It's not just sort of left-wing or left-leaning organizations. It's all of government.
Right.
It's even the investigating authorities. It's the IRS itself. It's the, U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Division, the FBI. I know that these are also targets of the current administration. There is a real problem that needs to be solved. How we're going about solving it is a separate discussion. That taxpayer money to the tune of $108+ million was wasted.
Robbed.
Yeah, robbed, and didn't actually go to its intended purpose is disgusting. Fortunately, there are a lot of assets. These assets can be sold. The taxpayer can recoup a lot of that money. It wasn't spent, say, for example, on, just experiences. These are tangible things. The real estate market is strong. They should be able to recoup that money.
Yeah, or some of it, yeah.
So it's not all lost. However, it's going to take a significant manpower. It's going to take a lot of work through the courts in order to liquidate and to make things whole again. Once the DOJ found that there was a fraud being perpetrated, they quickly filed an indictment, and this is December of 2023 in the Western District of Texas. The charges were, mail fraud, 5 counts, money laundering, 4 counts, and also aggravated identity theft. There was 1 count of that because she was using a digital signature of her supervisor to get some of these approvals through. The fraudulent transactions, there were at least 50 instances, and as we mentioned, it was over $100 million.
So she's facing 10 counts there, but ultimately, Janet Mello pleaded guilty in March of 2024 to just 5 counts of mail fraud and 5 counts of filing a false tax return. And she was recently sentenced to 15 years in federal prison.
So while the government is, doing a hardcore press and seizing all of these assets, there is one little sticky point. What about her military pension? What happened there?
Well, a judge has denied her request to keep her $4,400 a month pension while she's serving a 15-year prison sentence for stealing the $108 million from the Army, but not all of it. So the government is basically taking away 95% of her pension, but she gets to keep some of it, which is kind of messed up. I mean, for the amount of money that she stole.
It's kind of messed up.
The U.S. attorney argued that she shouldn't receive 95% of her pension while in prison, given that it's costing the government about $50,000 a year to incarcerate her.
Yeah, this is all sorts of messed up, but it proves how the legal system and also government employee protections can be both helpful but also hurtful. And in this case, she's able to leverage those protections to her advantage for her service to the country as a government civilian employee.
All right. So hindsight's 2020 right now. What should have Janet Mello, AKA the Gucci goddess, have done differently, other than not steal money from the Army and little kids?
I mean, we'll start there. She probably shouldn't have flaunted so much. She was so over the top. I mean, 82 vehicles, all the Gucci clothing. To come into the office and to say, oh yeah, it's just my rich husband. People wonder, right? How rich? Why are you even working? Why even commit to your energy to a job if you're that wealthy? So,
I mean, even Walter White drove like that Aztec, right?
Yeah. Walter was he had.
She should buy a Kia.
He figured it out, right? You gotta kind of, hide it from certain folks.
You gotta blend in.
You gotta blend in. But instead, she was, emblazoned with the Gucci logo everywhere.
I guess this is a good time to talk about our sponsor. This episode was brought to you by Gucci.
Oh my gosh.
So Neal, we always like to leave the audience with some sort of wisdom or parting advice. What do you got today?
Whatever you do, don't embezzle money from the U.S. government.